For the second half of Chapter 7, we're going to start solving equations that have a degree 2 or 3 or have exponents in them. In order to solve them, we want them to be in what we call factored form. Okay, so this is standard form. We learned standard form earlier in the chapter. We also make it equal to 0 if it's an equation. In factored form, it would look like this. It would be something times something equals 0. Okay, same with this. This is standard form. It's going from highest degree to lowest degree, and it equals to 0. In factored form, it would look like this. It's the product of two polynomials, and it's still equal to 0. Okay, there are times when we like standard form. There are times when we liked factored form. For today, we like factored form. Okay, the reason we like factored form is because of the zero product property. Zero product property says if A times B equals 0, then it must be true that either A equals 0 or B equals 0. Otherwise, when you multiply them, you wouldn't get 0. So we're going to use that fact to solve equations in factored form. So for example 1, it says x plus 6 times x minus 5 equals 0. Okay, according to the zero product property, if x plus 6 times x minus 5 equals 0, it must be true that either this factor is equal to 0, or it must be true that the other factor is equal to 0. Okay, I'm going to solve both of these equations, and it's going to give me the two values that will satisfy this equation. Okay, when I solve this just like a normal two-step equation. So I'm going to minus the 6, and I get x equals negative 6 for one of my possible answers. For my x minus 5 equation, since it's a minus 5, I'll plus 5 to cancel it over. And then my answer will be x equals 0 plus 5 is 5. So x equals negative 6 or x equals 5 are my two possible answers, and I need to include all possible answers. Okay, let's look at example 2. First, I need to check that it's in factored form. It says x minus 1 times 2x minus 7 equals 0. Okay, because it's factored and because it equals to 0, I can use the zero product property. Okay, and just like before, it must be true that either this factor is equal to 0 or the other factor must equal to 0. And then I'm going to go ahead and solve it both ways so I can see my possible answers. So x minus 1, I cancel the minus 1 by plussing 1. So x equals 1 is one of my answers, plus 7. 2x equals 0 plus 7 is 7. I'm not done solving because it has the 2x, so I'm going to divide by 2. X equals 7 over 2. I will leave it as a fraction. So x equals 1 and x equals 7 over 2 are my two answers. Depending on the factors, you might get more than two answers, but you have to find all possible answers. Okay, we're going to do two more of these. Okay, so for example 3, this is also in factored form. It says x times x plus 8 is equal to 0. Because it's equal to 0, it must be true that either this is equal to 0 or else the other factor is equal to 0. And I do show my work because sometimes eventually these will get harder than this. Okay, now for the first equation, it says x equals 0. So it's already solved for me. So my first answer is x equals 0. For the second answer, I will have to solve x plus 8 equals 0. To cancel the plus 8, I minus 8 on both sides. And I get x equals negative 8 as my final answer. Okay, one more example. Okay, for the last example, it says x times 5x minus 3 times 3x plus 6 is equal to 0. So these are all multiplied, so they're factors, and it is equal to 0, so the zero product property applies. There just happens to be three factors, which is actually going to give me three answers. So first I have this little guy here. This tells me that x equals 0, which is great because it's already solved for me. For the next factor, it could be that 5x minus 3 is equal to 0. And I'm going to go ahead and solve this equation. 5x equals 0 plus 3 is 3. Divide by 5. X equals 3/5 is my second answer. But because there's another factor, it must be that there's actually three possible solutions to this equation. Negative 6 divided by 3 is negative 2. So this particular equation had three answers: x equals 0, x equals 3/5, and x equal to negative 2.